I want to take just a few minutes here in this video and explain to you what it is that the science, what is it that we're talking about when we say science? The biggest part that I want that to mean to you is that this has been discovered through scientific studies. Understanding what's going on, electrochemically in the horse's brain and in how it processes that information it's decided by scientific studies. In contrast to, or in comparison to, kind of everything else that we know about horsemanship, which has been handed down from generation to generation, from trainer to trainer, and there's a lot of just misbeliefs that get mixed into there. And so we've really taken the approach. We wanted to understand the study, understand the brain, how it functions, how it cannot function, and then the chemical influence that's going on in the brain when these horses under training and riding or just out in everyday use when they're making decisions. What's going on electrochemically and what's going on in their brain. So two main factors with your horse that we talk about during our science seminar that we teach is the two different nervous systems. You've got the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight-flight. And so when your horse is influenced and it's in the sympathetic nervous system, your horse is fearful or is tense or is nervous. But the most important part is that your horse's brain is being heavily influenced by two chemicals when it's in the sympathetic nervous system. And those two chemicals are cortisol, which is stress and worry, right? And this is the same type of cortisol that we have, the same influences that we have in our nervous system. So your horse in that sympathetic nervous system is in fight-flight. His brain is heavily influenced by cortisol. So that means the decision-making or what's happening with that horse's muscles and what it's doing is being influenced by caution or by fear because there's so much cortisol being pushed into the horse's brain at that time. So under that influence, you're going to get reactions, right? You're going to get instinctive reactions under the influence of cortisol. That looks like, your horse leaving, pulling away from you, spooking, jumping away, bucking, rearing, bolting, whatever those behaviors are. They're not even decisions, they're just instinctive reactions that your horse has. And your horse has those instinctive reactions because he is too influenced by cortisol, and then adrenaline gets mixed into there. So adrenaline is the second chemical or drug that is influenced in your horse's mind during that sympathetic fight-flight nervous system. And adrenaline mixed with stress and worry that's the recipe for a freak out. If you want to create a horse to freak out, add a lot of cortisol in there, get them all stressed and worried, and then dump some gas on the fire. Just pump it in there with some adrenaline, and boom, you've got an issue. So we talk about that during our 2-day event. We go over these chemicals during these nervous systems that your horse operates in and really give you, an in-depth understanding. So the other nervous system, the other side of it, is the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's rest and relax nervous system. So this is when your horse is, his head is down, he's engaged maybe with what's going on, he's relaxed, he's alert, he's not asleep, but he's alert, he's got his eyes and his ears are up, he's paying attention. And in this nervous system, in the parasympathetic nervous system, this is where your horse this is where the learning really is solidified and is really reinforced. Now they learn in both nervous systems, in the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. You've got to get into the sympathetic and then come down to the parasympathetic. That's just the learning cycle. There's got to be a little bit of worry there for the horse to want to figure it out. If there's no want to from your horse, then you're not getting much done. Your horse is training you, in essence, right? Because he's looking around and he's just not wanting to do anything. So the chemicals or the drugs that are in the parasympathetic nervous system that you'll be working with your horse are called dopamine and serotonin. Now dopamine is by far the biggest chemical of choice, the drug of choice that we use during training horses is getting that dopamine release happening with your horse. Dopamine rewards behavior. So regardless of what your horse does, when something happens, he's going to reward himself with dopamine. He's going to reward behavior. So let's say, for example, your horse is stressed and worried, and he kind of bolts and pulls back, or jumps to the side 6 or 8 feet or whatever, just has this reactive moment. And then if you just let your horse stand there and you watch him, he's going to lick and chew. Might take him a minute as he starts to come down in that nervous system, because they can't get the dopamine release until they transition from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. And during that transition, that's when that dopamine is released, and the dopamine rewards behavior. So if your horse spooks and jumps and then gets the release 10 feet away, and he stands there and licks and chews, that dopamine is reinforcing the behavior of a reactive decision or a reactive moment that happened. So we can take that same dopamine and use that with our horses to teach the behaviors that we want to teach. So we'll say, for example, that same horse, as he's getting a little worried about whatever it is that's happening, but we're able to manage the pressure and the release of that pressure. So we might pressure that horse up a little bit and get him to where he's just kind of worried and concerned and just about ready to leave, and then we release on the behavior of holding still, on the behavior of relaxing, or on the behavior of that horse thinking and engaging and trying to figure out an answer. When that horse is seeking and looking for ways to handle the pressure, and we can release on that behavior, that dopamine will come in and reinforce that behavior. It'll feel good to that horse, and it will reward the horse for that mental behavior of seeking out the answer, or seeking out how to handle the pressure or the stimulus, rather than just having an instinctive reaction and leaving. So it's super important that we get these chemicals set up correctly in your horse's mind for learning. So, and using dopamine and serotonin is the fast track in teaching your horse and getting your horse down regulated and getting your horse safe. Let's talk about serotonin for just a minute, because that's the second chemical. That's the other drug that your horse creates in its brain. Now, these are chemicals and drugs that are naturally on board. They're naturally available to your horse, and your horse is constantly grabbing from this drug cabinet to medicate itself, to handle the situation. The trouble is too many horses are reaching for cortisol, because that's the drug of choice for Mother Nature's instinctive reactions. The more stressed, the more worried, the higher your fight-flight level is, the more likely you are to survive in the wild. So we've got to rewire that and change that in our horse's brain and get them to where they're reaching for that dopamine and the serotonin so that they can relax and feel good. So serotonin is the drug that balances our horse's emotions between fear and safety. There's just not a whole lot of other emotions going on with your horse when we really break it down and look at what's important to your horse, and that's safety. And if it's not feeling safe, then it's in a fear type of an emotion. So we want that serotonin, and set up that serotonin chemical in our horse's mind to help him transition between fear into safety. And that's also in that transition from the sympathetic nervous system to the lower nervous system, or that parasympathetic. That serotonin plays a role during that transition in there. Now, some of the body language that your horse will show during this transition, right? So you'll see your horse cortisol, stress and worry, head up, eyes open, ears alert, stiff neck, wide eyes, right? That's cortisol and adrenaline. Now, as your horse starts to come down, and if you just watch your horse relax, you're going to see everything soften. You're going to see the head and neck muscles soften. You're going to see the ears just kind of lay back a little bit and just be relaxed. And as that starts to come down, your horse is going to start blinking slowly and relaxed. And then you're going to see your horse lick and chew. And the licking and chewing is the marker. That's the one thing we look for the most in working with the chemicals with our horse, is watching for that licking and chewing. Because here's what happens. When your horse gets spiked up into that cortisol range, or into fight-flight mode, the stomach or the gut gets turned off. Mother Nature says, look, we don't need to process any food. We're in fight-flight mode. don't need to worry about, that nice salad that we just had. So the gut gets turned off. And then as your horse transitions back down into that parasympathetic nervous system, the stomach gets reactivated. So in your horse's mind, when that cortisol has dissipated, or it has had the opportunity, the time for it to, flow out or dissipate or be absorbed, out of the brain, and that influence is relaxed, that's when your horse can transition into that parasympathetic nervous system. And that takes time. It takes time of your horse just doing nothing, just letting your horse come down. And as your horse comes down, the stomach gets reactivated. And when the stomach gets reactivated, it activates the salivatory glands in your horse's mouth. And that's what triggers that licking and chewing. And so that's how we know when our horses are transitioning from the sympathetic nervous system into that parasympathetic nervous system, is that licking and chewing. That's where that learning model is being able to complete that circle. We've got to take them up into a little bit of cortisol and worry, and then we've got to show those horses how to bring that down and get the dopamine and the serotonin. And it doesn't take your horse very long at all before they're going to start patterning in their mind what feels better. Where do they feel safer? Do they feel safer in the sympathetic nervous system, being influenced by cortisol, stress and worry, or do they feel safer by being in the parasympathetic nervous system, being under the influence of dopamine and serotonin? Well, obviously, they're going to feel much better with dopamine and serotonin. And as your horse starts becoming aware that it has the option, or it has the availability of which nervous system it's going to transition into, as it starts to have that awareness that it can make that decision on its own. So this is where we're teaching horses how to think, right? We're teaching your horse, we're going to show you how your horse can learn how to think, which will get him out of trouble. So when your horse knows how to think, he's going to learn how to stay in that dopamine range because it feels better and it feels safer. So then the scary something happens over there, and instead of your horse being flooded with cortisol, your horse is going to take a quick read on that and relax and go for the dopamine. And it doesn't take very long before your horse, they really become addicted to learning. They want to learn. They want to stay in that dopamine range. But the only way they'll know that is if they're bumped up into that cortisol, or they're given the option to get into that cortisol, stress and worry range, and then have them choose back into the rest and relax or the dopamine. So that's kind of how the science works. Now, what we're going to do at our science seminars, as we're teaching this in our 2-day event, we're going to go over all of the dialogue of these words, the chemicals, what they mean, how they influence the horse, and then we're going to go out into the round pen, and you're going to see the horse go through these different transitions. You're going to see the cortisol. You're going to see the adrenaline. You'll see dopamine. You'll see serotonin. You're going to see that horse go back and forth in these nervous systems, and then you're going to see this horse learn to learn and want to learn. And that's the biggest kind of aha in using science-based horsemanship, is we're just using the natural chemicals that horse wants to have, and we're just showing him how to get them in what we do, in how we work, how we ride, how we tack, how we brush, how we load in and out of the horse trailer, how we go do our work and we go trail riding. So much so that horse just wants to stay in that dopamine range. So an example I want to talk to you about down regulation and up regulation, and what does that mean with our horses. First, up regulation is the stress and worry, right? So if something happens in the environment, stimulus, something's happening. Maybe you're out on the trail ride and something happens over there, and the horses are getting worried, and the cortisol's starting to build up, and the adrenaline's starting to come in, and your horse is tight and prancing around. And so that's up regulation, right? Your horse is going up in his nervous system. He's up into the sympathetic nervous system. So down regulation is obviously just the opposite of that. When your horse comes out of the sympathetic nervous system, gets that dopamine, rest and relax, head down, muscles soft, eyes blinking, ears are soft, big breath, licking and chewing. That's all down regulation. So what happens a lot of times is our horses get very upregulated and they don't know how to downregulate. This isn't something that your horse just automatically knows how to do. He will automatically downregulate. It just may take a lot of time, or your horse may hold and just stay tense and wait a long time, like hours, to come down and relax. So upregulated horse. So let's talk about an upregulated horse, one that, so let's, you're going on a trail ride. We'll just go through a pretty normal situation where we end up getting in trouble with our horse. So we'll just start right at the beginning. You're going on a trail ride with your friends. And so you hustle out to the corral and you go in there and you get your horse caught. Let's say he's a little bit difficult to catch, or, he's kind of moving around, and you just kind of hustle in there and you get him caught. And you bring him back out of the corral and you head over to the trailer. You're going to tack him up. Well, that, just you catching your horse, added some stress to your horse. It added some cortisol. You're a predator. You just walked in there with a prey animal and got the halter on him and let him out. So to some degree, that's going to add some cortisol into there. And so he's got that much, whatever that is. We're just going to call it a level of, 1 is very little cortisol and 10 is something bad's about to happen, or something bad is happening. So let's say you get him out of the corral and he doesn't downregulate, and you walk him over to the horse trailer. So let's just say he's now at a level 1 as far as stress and worry. You tie him up to the horse trailer and you go get your curry comb, your hoof pick, and your hairbrush, and you come back and you just start scrubbing through that horse, and you get him all brushed and pick his feet up and get him cleaned out, and he still isn't able to downregulate. He's just is kind of holding, and you're not showing him how to downregulate. So he's just going to stand there. So now he's up at, say, a 3 or a 4 in his tension level because he hasn't been able to downregulate. So now you put all your preparation, your cleaning tools away. You go grab the saddle pad, saddle, come out, swing the saddle blanket around, throw it up on there, throw the saddle on, and you kind of see him. He gets a little bit tight, and he moves his feet around the trailer a little bit, but, no big deal. You keep going, and you get him cinched up and get that all tight, get the back cinch on, you tie your coat on, stick your lunch in the saddlebags, and you get ready to load that horse in the trailer. Well, he still hasn't downregulated. So he's still kind of tight and holding. So now we're at a 6 or 7 as you load him into the horse trailer. And you kind of push him in fast because you're trying to get to the trail ride and go meet everybody. And he gets in the trailer and he's kind of nervous getting in there. So maybe that only adds, 1 more point on. So now we're at an 8, and you trailer down to the trailhead. Trailer's bouncing along. He's got his head watching out the window. He's still tense. He's not totally relaxed in the horse trailer. And you get to the trail ride and you unload that horse out of the horse trailer. And sure enough, he's just kind of tight and, boy, head up, and he's looking around and he's trying to smell everything, and he's being heavily influenced by cortisol because all this stress and worry from the moment you caught him in the corral all the way up till now has been building. So as you unload him out of the trailer, he's like he's at a level 8, and you get him out of the trailer, tie him up, and scurry around and grab a few more things. You're getting ready to go. Other people are walking around. Their dogs are running around, and people are riding back and forth on their horses, and your horse is watching all of that, and he's kind of nervous and just wondering what the heck's going on, and here we are. And so now he's up at a level, let's go to a 9. We're almost to have something happen. And so your horse is up there at level 9, and by now you're just getting in the saddle, right? You just swung in the saddle, and he's kind of prancing around and moving around on you, and you got a little bit of rein, and you're kind of trying to hold him back, and he's wanting to move around, and he's tense. You can feel it. He's needing to let that go, and he's needing to come down, but gosh, he's just tense and nervous, and you're getting ready to head out on that trail ride, and luck, as hopefully this is how it goes. You head out on that trail ride, and for the first half hour or so, your horse is pretty tense. And as you keep riding and you kind of get your spot in line with all your friends and you're all out riding, you start hearing your horse. That's the first sign your horse is starting to come down. And all we can hope for at this point is that you didn't really hit that level 10 and have something happen. And so maybe sometimes what happens at that level 10 is you're just getting ready to go on your trail ride, and your friend asks you if you want to take an extra jacket, and you say, sure, bring it over, and your friend rides over and hands you that jacket. And boy, that's it. You've taken your jacket on and off of your horse 100 times, but he's always been at a level of 1 or 2. But now your friend's bringing over that jacket, and they hand it to you, but now your horse is at level 9. So now that jacket coming in, and your horse is like, that's it. That's all I can take. I'm at level 10. Something's got to give. I can't take any more cortisol. The adrenaline is pumping in here like crazy, and boom, maybe your horse jumps and swings, and goes 10 feet or 25 feet over there, or maybe he just gets really tight and turns and spins, and he's just kind of freaked out by that, and he goes moving around, and so that's a horse that isn't able to downregulate, right? So that horse doesn't know that dopamine is a better deal than cortisol. Cortisol is Mother Nature's way, so you got to know that Mother Nature built these horses so that cortisol, worrying, stress, will save its life, right? Because the horses that are out there on the prairie eating, and they just kind of glance over and go, oh, that looks like a little furry blob over there, I'm not going to worry about it. It turns out to be a mountain lion. That horse is dead. So those horses, they didn't last long. So Mother Nature's got them programmed that fight, flight, and worrying, that's how you survive. Well, using the brain chemistry, we can change that. We can rewire that in your horse's mind and get him to where when those stress, those pressures are starting to come up, your horse can just take a breath and relax and get that dopamine release and get that down regulation happening. So let's run through that same scenario, but we'll go through this in mind that we're going to keep our horse down regulated all the way through that scenario. So we're going on a trail ride again. I'm going to come grab my horse out of the pen. As I walk in and get him haltered, I'm going to hang out with him there a little bit, or I'm going to approach and retreat, and I'm going to let my horse lick and chew a couple of 3 times before I get him haltered and get him over to the trailer. So just me walking in the corral adds some tension. You see your horse's head come up. So I might approach, just go touch that horse, back off, and let him down regulate. Let him go back to that dopamine and lick and chew. Then I can go in there and put that halter on. Maybe he got a little tense and his head come up, and I can back out of there, let him lick and chew again. And then maybe I'll lead him over to the horse trailer, and he gets out of the corral and he's out in the parking lot there, and he's kind of worried about everything. Tie him up to the trailer, and I might hang out with him right there, give him a little rub. I want him to lick and chew again there at the horse trailer. Then I'm going to go get my cleaning tack, my brushes, and my hoof pick. I'm going to come back. I'm going to brush a couple, 3 or 4 strokes. I'm going to get out. Let him down regulate. Let that dopamine come in. Let him lick and chew. I'll go back in, brush a few more. Let him down regulate, lick and chew. All this while I'm showing him, and he's learning that dopamine feels better than cortisol. And it won't be long. He's going to just start going for that dopamine. So now I get him all brushed. But see, we've let him down regulate kind of each step of the way. We've let him have that dopamine release. We've let him lick and chew and come down into that parasympathetic nervous system. So I'm getting ready to put the saddle on my horse, and my horse is still at a 1 or a 2. We're not up at a 5 or a 6 or a 7 of a horse that's stressed and worried. So I go get my tack, get my saddle, come back, throw it on, get him cinched up, and I let him lick and chew some more. And I make sure he's relaxing in between each step. Maybe I put the saddle blanket on, he gets a little tight. I'm going to wait a minute, let him lick and chew. Get my saddle on, wait a minute, let him lick and chew. Always letting him choose to come back down to that parasympathetic nervous system and relax and get that dopamine release, get that serotonin going in there so that my horse can balance between being worried and being safe. So now I get ready to load my horse in the trailer. He's still at a 1 or a 2, right? We're not even stressed out yet. We go over, asked him to get in the trailer. He goes in. I go in and hang out there with him. Release. Let him lick and chew while he's in the trailer. Get him back down regulated. Go on my trailer ride. I get to the trailhead. Unload him out of the trailer. Sure enough, he gets out of the trailer. He's looking around. But then what a down-regulated horse is going to do is going to look around, lower his head, and lick and chew as soon as he gets out of the trailer. He's going to want that dopamine. He's going to want to get back to safety, get back to that parasympathetic nervous system, because this horse knows how to think. He knows what feels better and what is safer, and it's dopamine and serotonin. So he's going to want to go for those chemicals. So I get him out of the trailer. He's going to lick and chew, go over and tie him up. Going to let him lick and chew again over there, keep him relaxed. I'll go get my stuff, my coat, my lunch, my water bottles, get that all packed on my horse, walk him around a bit, give him plenty of time and space that he can downregulate, lick and chew. By the time I get in the saddle, when I'm ready to go for my ride, we're still at a level 2, maybe a 3 in his worry level. And so now my friend's bringing me over that same coat, right? Because I'm going to take this extra coat. They're going to ride over and hand me that coat, and my horse is going to be just fine. Because that coat or that pressure, that stimulus is happening with a horse that's still at a level 2 or 3. So he's got from there clear to 10 before he's going to have a problem. So your horse needs to know how to downregulate. They'll do it on their own, but they'll only do it way later and after cortisol. And so it proves to them, the dopamine reinforces the behavior that worrying is the thing to do. So we got to get that rewired. And that's where the science and our science-based horsemanship seminar goes through and shows you exactly how to downregulate your horse, how to keep him in this parasympathetic nervous system, rest and relax. That's where the learning is. That's where safety is. And once you can show your horse how to get there, and then he can figure out on his own how to stay there, now you've got a good, calm, quiet, confident horse that's ready to go do some stuff. So click on the link right above right here, the tab that says, the Science-Based Horsemanship Seminars. Click on that. That'll take you to our events page. And from there, you can scroll down and you can look and see the different locations where we have these science seminars set up, where we're teaching, and where you can get more information on when and how to get to one of our seminars.